Okay, now sit already. Don't just stand there. Well, sit on the couch. It's comfortable.
Those seats are awesome. I was literally just sitting there. They're great.
Now we have a very interesting topic from the group Polyamory Toronto, David Williston.
Hello.
So, David.
Yes.
What is polyamory?
The greatest thing in the world.
Nice.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
It honestly is.
Actually, hold this. So polyamory is an ethical form of non-monogamy. So non-monogamy obviously is breaking away from the tradition of couples being based on two people. So that's been a very heteronormative thing for a long time now.
I think a couple is two people. You mean a relationship being two people?
Yes.
It's literally the definition of
Yeah. So polyamory is a little bit set apart from some of the other forms of non-monogamy for sure, but even other forms of ethical non-monogamy in the sense that there's a very strong emphasis put on transparent communication. So it's about talking things out, making sure that everybody that's involved in the polycule or the relationship structure is equally aware of the things that have been agreed upon of being topics that have to be discussed ahead of time, such as how many partners. We were talking earlier in the show about prep and barriers, and sometimes that's, well, a lot of the time that's something that gets talked about very early on, like, well, if you're having all these other multiple partners, what is being done or not being done, what risks are being taken, and everybody needs to kind of be brought in to the fold on that. So it's not as though you would have one partner that has no idea if you're using barriers with a new partner, what their level of comfort is. And then if there's children involved, like if one couple has, like if one person in a relationship has children, you know, that's something that needs to be kind of like discussed about sharing the time.
Now, this is the reason why I wanted to have you back, and particularly because you were on the show previously, especially with an audience here, because this is a confusing and controversial topic for people.
Right.
I think we have a graphic that'll clear it up.
Okay, put the graphic on the screen.
This will clarify everything for everybody. There you go.
I totally expected the Babadook.
Oh, he wanted the Babadook.
That's what I thought he was gonna do.
Moments passed.
Okay, next
Pops
time.
up when you least expect
Yeah,
it.
I know.
It has to be unexpected.
Because if someone says, I'm in a polyamorous relationship or I'm polyamorous, people are going to have lots and lots of questions.
I think big love, honestly. Like, before meeting you and before kind of learning a lot more about it as we did through the point, that was the first thing that came to mind to me was, you know, Mormonism, big love, because, I mean, also Bill Paxton. But you know what I mean? Like, that was, I'm a very
but
pop
that's
culture.
polygamy, though.
Yeah, no, I know,
So-
but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, I didn't have a very clear idea of polyamory and especially ethical polyamory, like, whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's just throwing that out there as a perspective.
It is very confusing when you just kind of see this, especially for the first time. But
I thought
what
it was a floor plan for the 519 when I first put this slideshow together.
But like I said the last time I was on the show, for me personally, when I first looked at it, I was kind of like, oh God, I have to know all of this. But as I started to go through, I was like, well, you know, a lot of this stuff that's in this diagram, it just doesn't even apply. And as I started to kind of look at all the terms and think about what they meant and did a little bit of, you know, Wikipedia searching for some of the terms I wasn't as familiar with, I started to feel a lot more comfortable with just kind of gravitating to the 1, 2, or 3 things that overlap for me, because I'm kind of in that like purple area with the polyamorous relationships, maybe kind of toward the center with polymono.
What is commerce? Is that just like company, or I was thinking like companies who sponsor relationships? Like,
well,
our relationship brought to you by Squarespace.
It's figuring out how your relationship works with one or more people from a financial perspective.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
moving in, combining assets and stuff like that, which is a part of many relationships, definitely many traditional monogamous relationships, is like the shared bank account, and obviously if you're living together in a house that you paid for together, if you bring other partners into the fold, that's something else that needs to be discussed. Well, we've got assets together, so that's something that you would need new partners to be comfortable with. Like, oh, like, I don't really want you sharing a bank account with, your other partner, because then what are we sharing? Like, that might be something that gets brought up where it's something contentious to talk about from one side or the other, being for it or against it.
It seems like it could get complicated very quickly, as
it
most
could.
things involving money
Isn't
do.
every relationship complicated?
For sure, yeah.
Did you did you find it difficult to quote unquote come out as being polyamorous or in a polyamorous relationship? Because I find that, I'll be honest, I'm in a polyamorous relationship. I find that coming out as that is kind of like what it was like to come out as gay 20 years ago.
Right.
Do you?
Well, yeah, I actually had a coming out party 2 years ago, and for me at the time, it was more about me coming out as pansexual, and I did.
Which is a whole other discussion.
Which I've never heard that used in a non-comedic context.
I'll show you the pans later.
Yeah.
So I did
You
it
could
more.
fry my skillet.
I did it more as a token because throughout my life, like I was outed at a very young age when I was 13 years old, and outed to everybody, like my whole family.
Outed as.
Well, that's the thing, is I was outed as being gay.
Okay.
Even though I had never at that point ever said out loud or in writing, I'm gay. But my family found out and people at school found out, long story, but people decided for me that I was gay. And despite my trying throughout high school, actually, at that time, to say like, well, I don't really think that's right. I'm not identifying with it. So I tried to tell people I was bisexual and people rejected it. And people would say like, don't worry, we accept you as gay. It's fine that you're gay, but don't try and be something you're not. Like that was the conversations that were happening back then. I grew up in kind of a smaller town. So later in life, even though I started, in my 20s and, coming into my 30s, because yes, I am older than I look, I started to feel like it was a done deal. Like people who know me, and I like who I like. And there were even people already at that point in my life that knew I was having kind of an open structure to my relationships, that I wasn't just kind of sticking to seeing one single person and that's it. So I didn't think it was necessary, but when I had the coming out party itself, like on the night that I had it, and it was just close family and friends that I had, maybe about 22 people that were there, all people that I figured this was kind of a moot point anyway. But when I stood up in front of them and I started to say like, so here's what I, asked you people to come here today to hear. I'm pansexual and I'm polyamorous, and I broke down crying. And I just thought like, it is a really, really big deal to clarify when it matters so much to you, when you think this is a really big part of who I am. It matters to me to be able to have free love, to be able to love who I want to, however I want to. And when it's something that I've kind of kept inside for so long, but finally kind of publicly, said to people, this really, really matters to me, that I'm able to love and love and love and love and love whoever it is that I do love. Kind of all of that, emotion just sort of burst out. So it definitely was a big deal, and I didn't think it would be. I thought like, well, I don't need a coming out party. Everybody knows,
Right.
Who I am already. But having that actual act, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Well,
Being able to love whoever you want. This is neither the time nor the place for that.
yes. What I find interesting is that people get freaked out about the term polyamory or what it is to be polyamorous. But I haven't seen any statistics on this, but I'm assuming that very few people are actually monogamous. They may say they're monogamous, but they're not. Like, if you say you're monogamous, but you're cheating on the side, guess what? You're not really
Well,
monogamous.
I think there's a difference between being polyamorous and being an asshole, which
No,
is
no,
what
no,
you're
no,
saying.
But I
It's the whole honesty thing, right?
I
Well,
bring,
it's up here though, because some people accidentally end up in one of these forms of polyamory, which is don't ask, don't tell, which is that kind of magenta.
Oh, I see.
That magenta in the middle. But I mean, for it to actually be a polyamorous relationship, that needs to be discussed. Like, don't tell me what you do.
I feel like there's this that the way that at one time, heterosexual was like the norm or the pinnacle, and then, there were the other people who didn't live up to, the expectation. And I feel like, monogamy is still put on this pedestal of being what we all strive for or for what is perfection. And yet very few people actually practice monogamy.
Right, which is why it's bizarre that it's still promoted. It's recognized so much through the government, like institutions and stuff like that. Because we were talking earlier about what it is that like the governments recognize and what it is that they give privilege toward. And couples, monogamous couples definitely have privileges within just the societal system for sure.
Actually, Faye, you had a question.
Well, I'm curious because this is a topic that was always I always am interested in. I'm always interested in polyamorous relationships, but then for me, I can't be in one unless I'm actually in a relationship. So for me, I have to be in a relationship to be polyamorous in a polyamorous relationship. But for me, it's like, is there a difference within polyamorous relationships? Because in terms of, I've known people who are like in a polyamorous relationship, but it's just 3 people. And then there's polyamorous relationships where it's just like...
So like a throuple?
Yeah. So I'm like, what's the difference between a throuple and you're having a relationship with somebody, he's your main boyfriend, and you have like other people who you're close, like other, you can say other boyfriends.
I've never heard the term throuple until
until
like a week ago.
That's what I know.
I've heard it so much.
Whenever I hear polyamorous relationship, I think of a throuple. Well,
that's a kind. No, isn't that a kind of?
It is. I mean, polyamory it basically means more than 2.
Okay.
And there I've gone and plugged a really good book about it because there's a book that's called More Than 2. And it's all about polyamory, and it's considered kind of, the Bible.
I thought that was The Ethical Slut.
Oh.
Ethical Slut is an older book that is a little more specific, where More Than 2 is kind of to correct this idea that polyamory just means one thing, and it doesn't. Polyamory is a totally customizable relationship, and that's what's fantastic about it. That's what really resonates with me, because I've had not so much long-distance relationships, but I've had very odd, relationships, like me being a guy who's into guys. I've had relationships with guys that do not identify as being into guys, but between the 2 of us, we definitely identified as having a pretty powerful relationship. So I've had a lot of relationships like that throughout life where
they do mouth things.
Yeah, they do mouth things, Doug.
Doug, could you be in a polyamorous relationship? Would you be?
No, I could not.
No, why not? I'm just curious.
Honestly, because I don't have the energy for it. I don't have and I don't mean that in like a crass joke kind of way, because I'll have lots of those for the rest of the night. But no, in more of like I function best when I can focus my energy on one person, and when there's one person that wants to focus their energy on me. That's just the thing that excites me. I like that idea of somebody who the one person who wants to text me or call me first thing, or something exciting happens in their life, or whatever it is, or chooses to spend time with me. I find that I like the intimacy of just 2 people, and I don't think that I want to share that intimacy or their intimacy with someone else or my own. I want to focus it on one person. But that,
But even in monogamous relationships, that kind of feeling, it sort of has an expiry date in the majority of cases, because it sounds like what you're referring to is new relationship energy, which is something that gets talked a lot about in Polyamory Toronto. Where
I know what you mean, but that doesn't apply to me specifically. Like, I know what you're talking about, but
okay.
That's a long-term thing for me. Like, the more and the longer I'm in a relationship, the more.
But what you're capable of isn't necessarily what you're going to find in someone else. I mean,
Dying alone, got it.
You'll
Thanks.
never find it.
Okay, so that's one of the straight guys. Tegan, as one of the gay guys, where do you fall on this?
I'm definitely monogamous, but I don't agree with you about your the statement you made about cheating, because from my experience and what I've seen, people feel more empowered than ever to not stay in something that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So I feel like people walk away, the relationship's over, they move on. They don't stay in something like maybe they used to.
Agreed, but what about people who don't try, who don't put the effort into something that could be a lasting and fulfilling relationship because of this culture of just getting everything and everything being perfect all the time? Does that play into it maybe a little bit?
Maybe. I don't. It's such a complex issue. I mean,
we're gonna get all the answers right now.
No, if you're happy and you're not hurting anybody, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me, and it shouldn't matter to anybody else. You just do you, and do what's gonna make you happy.
Yeah, but that's not an interesting talk show.
Gordon, what about you?
It's very politically correct.
So just maybe just don't tell. Just that one there.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh, that's where you
Don't
are.
ask, don't tell.
Don't ask,
Jordan.
don't tell. Ori.
Absolutely. 100%. Just because
100% what? Sorry.
that I would be polyamorous. I've actually been thinking a lot about it since you were last on the show, and it would actually work out perfectly for me, just because I've never actually been in a long-term relationship.
Which I cannot believe.
I just
I
well,
would
the
think
thing
it'd be
the thing
such
is
a catch.
the thing is this like
Try to lock them down.
I'm thank you. But my eyes always wander because I'm attracted to a lot of people in a lot of different ways, right? And I may not get something from someone, but I can get something from somebody else. But it's not like I still don't love this person or like this person, but I want the best of like all of the worlds. And I know that's very selfish of me, but
But it's not.
but I just like and that's just the thing. And
It's not selfish.
No,
It's
I know, and
definitely not
like
selfish.
and
that's the perception.
and I usually, every time that I get into what would be a long-lasting relationship, I find myself thinking, like, you know what, I really like this person, but is it fair to me to want another person as well? You know what I mean? Whereas in polyamory, like, it just works because I can have things with different people that I need. You know what I mean?
See, in the polyamory community, like Eva, who is the lead organizer, she often has said over the years I've come to know her that she sees friendships, any kind of, with a family member, whoever, those are all relationships that take different amounts of energy. And it's all about, understanding what your limits are and playing within it, right? Like that lotto, slogan. But I kind of brought it up last time I was on the show, but you could put it into any number of simple metaphors where it's like, if you're with a partner who loves skydiving, like, it's the biggest thing in their life. Like, they have to skydive. They are someone who skydives, but you are terrified of heights and you will never, ever, ever go skydiving with them. Why would you want to like be in a relationship where you develop all these feelings and you care about them and you say to them, well, since you can't go skydiving with me, you can't go skydiving.
It's not fair.
To kind of in this, not always intentional, but like sort of a manipulative kind of way to kind of hold someone in this emotional kind of like hostage situation. Whereas you're in a polyamorous relationship, it's like, oh, the other night at the pub, I ended up meeting this person and they love skydiving. And for your partner to look at you and say, fantastic, go skydiving with them.
Right.
I want you to have that relationship with that person. And I mean, the skydiving is one kind of extreme example that's pretty easy to visualize.
And skydiving, that's not a euphemism for something.
Well, no, but that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
There is skydiving
It's a
porn,
metaphor.
just so you know,
it's a
if
metaphor
you wanna
that's
look
easy
it
enough
up.
for people
It's a
to
real thing.
visualize, but it could be anything. It could
Whatever
be,
kind of diving you're into.
Exactly.
I mean, you could end up finding someone that's just into mouth stuff, and that would be great.
What? Okay. Well,
See, here's the thing.
May I ask? Pardon me for wanting to know this, but what's going on there, Doug? What's happening?
Doug, it's your mouth.
Let me tell you a tale. No. It was earlier in the show. I was just explaining. I was trying to say that I, speak from a perspective of being a straight guy, but I, went to high school and did a bunch of theater and whatnot. So I spent a lot of time with people who are very sexually fluid. I would say that they definitely don't concern themselves with particular boundaries, and there's lots of parties and things where
Alcohol.
Yeah, you drink some alcohol and
And mouth stuff
people,
happens.
people
Stuff
start
happens.
using their
All right,
mouths
all
to
right.
touch other people's mouths and whatnot.
But honestly, within the polyamory community, because communication and somewhat labels, but it's more just about finding ways to describe kind of yourself, to describe your relationship structure. But because communication is such a big thing, it's within the Polyamory Toronto and greater polyamory community that a lot of new terms are coming out, or at least really kind of being popularized.
Like skydiving.
No, not skydiving, but things like heteroflexible, things like straight-ish. Yeah.
You ever heard that one?
Put your leg up over your head.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of terms to describe all of the different ways that people who are sitting there thinking like, well, I don't really fall into this category and I don't really fall into that. I'm just me. And it's like, well, here you go. Here's a brand new term just for you, which is to describe, someone who is identifying for the most part as heterosexual, but they're not closed off to the prospect
I like
of,
that. I think that's important because it's one thing to say let's try to get rid of labels, but I think that innately goes against the way that humans are. I think that we try to categorize and understand things, and we do that by compartmentalizing. And and we're getting to a point where we can bleed things over. But I think that that's, you know, people who don't fit neatly into any particular thing, to be able to give them a label so that they feel included and are able to be understood more, I think is an important thing.
I love descriptions over labels. That's me personally.
For sure.
I think that as a society sometimes we're lazy. We're
Oh,
lazy
yeah.
and we want to just kind of have a word to throw at someone to say like, you know what, I don't really want to tell you about my life and my relationship structure and that, so I'm just going to tell you, boom, there's the word, look it up. Which I don't really agree with. I mean, it works for a lot of people, and when you talk about emotional labor, which again, you have multiple relationships in your life, the emotional labor is really kind of coming out of you sometimes to be able to donate to this person, that person, what it is that you have to give. So, I mean, when someone comes up, they're like, oh, tell me all about, you know, why it is that you brought 2 people to my wedding kind of things. It's like, oh, okay, you know, do I have the energy to kind of explain it to this person? Because are they going to get it? Are they not going to get it?
Is there something to, like in that case, if the person's wedding that you're going to is not comfortable with it when it's an event about
Well,
them,
if
and
the-
I don't
if
have
the
an
invite
agenda.
says a +1.
That's one
Fair
extra
enough.
meal.
That's true. I don't have an agenda here. I'm just asking because I genuinely don't know. Is there something to maybe saying like, all right, you know what, I am with multiple people, but I'm not going to bring 2 people. I'm only going to bring 1 person because it's their event. You know what I mean? Like, is there something to that?
Well, I think actually the whole +1 thing is going into another realm of where it is that we're moving, which is that whole +1 thing is, I'm not going to say discriminatory. Well, I mean, yeah, it is kind of discriminatory, but it's an old way of thinking where why would there only ever be a +1? If people RSVP ahead, because I mean, weddings are usually planned months and months in advance, but if people RSVP saying, I'm going to bring 2 people, that gives you enough time to plan like, all right,
Well, you know how we have the word heteronormative? I feel like we need like monogamonormative.
That's
Something
going to
like
catch
that.
on. It's catchy.
Monogamonormative. You actually have a bunch of information and definitions and stuff on the website, or is it the meetup site that has all the
So
stuff
we
on
do
it?
have polyamorytoronto.ca. It's a little out of date as of now. We're working on getting that brought up to date. It's only about a year out of date. And it's been around since 2011, I think. So there's still plenty of content on the actual official website, but most of what happens for Polyamory Toronto happens through the meetup groups. So if you just search for Polyamory Toronto on Meetup's website, which is a fantastic platform, or if you just Google search Polyamory Toronto, the first thing I think that comes up is the meetup group,
Yeah.
or the Facebook group.
Yeah.
The Facebook group is really good too. That's more kind of like a chat forum. And then there are events that are kind of thrown on there too so that people know what's going on, but it's more for people to kind of like discuss, connect, get together. You're like, hey, I met you over at this place that time. Like, I'm so glad I found you on here kind of thing. Whereas the meetup page, it has many of our upcoming events because we average about 8 to 10 events every single month. So that's a really great place to find out when we're having our chat and learn sessions, which we actually do in the 519.
Cool.
Here.
Sorry, where is that? How do you get there?
The 519 Community Center, right here at 519 Church Street.
Right up the stairs here, yeah.
Ooh.
Cool.
Yeah, and we also have our monthly pub nights, which are just kind of a great, social blow-off steam kind of thing. Just meet some new faces kind of thing.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, David Williston,
Thank you.
Polyamory Toronto.